Hi, I'm Elizabeth from ourpaleofamily.com, and tonight we're having meatloaf. And the different thing about this is that I'm going to make it in my Instant Pot. I actually picked up a pressure cooker book from the library, and I was just flipping through it for ideas. I often do that, just read other cookbooks for inspiration. And they made meatloaf in the Instant Pot, and I thought, what a great idea, because for as much of a planner as I am, meatloaf always throws me off. I end up we're kind of rushed to eat, and it's taking way longer to cook than I had anticipated. And I know people say, oh, make them in mini muffin pans or make tiny little loaves. But I don't ever think to do that. That's not my preference. I'd rather make one nice big meatloaf. So anyway, I'm going to try it in the Instant Pot. I thought that was kind of a unique idea. But I'm going to make it the same way that I would make meatloaf normally. And I have a recipe on my blog. I think it's just called Paleo Meatloaf. It's been up there for a while. I'm going to tweak it a little bit because I've been working on a homemade ketchup recipe. But aside from that, it's the same. So I'm going to start with, I always put a lot of vegetables in everything, anything I can. And so I'm going to beef this up with some veggies, and I'm going to saute them a little bit so that they are kind of, some of the moisture is cooked out. The same thing I do with my meatballs. So I'm going to put all this stuff in it's a half of an onion, in my food processor, because I'm going to use my food processor in a little bit anyway for my mashed cauliflower. So I've got to get it out, so I might as well use it. There was a little hole and a worm got in there. I'm going to make sure I cut the whole thing off. So just cut this into chunks, and cut that one in half. We have some friends that just got back from Pennsylvania and got us some of these really nice fresh mushrooms. So we'll use those. Stir around, make sure everybody is getting chopped. This guy's not going anywhere. He's a little too big, so I'll just cut him in half. Put a little too much in there, but I want this to be a nice little paste anyway, so that's okay. But I'm going to fish out these guys that didn't chop up as finely as I want, and I'll put them back in just a second. I'm going to take everything else out because my skillet is nice and hot. I have about 2 tablespoons of avocado oil in a big nonstick skillet, and I'm going to just cook these down for a few minutes. Crank that up pretty high. I'll put these back in real quick. Get this last bit in there. These are a little bit bigger pieces. It's totally fine. For my family, the more this is, more finely all of these veggies are chopped, the better, because then nobody can pick it out and say, I don't like that, I don't like the onion, I don't like the mushroom. Those couple little chunks are fine. Okay, so I just got all that stuff out of my way and rinsed out my food processor, so it'll be ready for my cauliflower. I am going to go ahead and add my salt and pepper to the vegetables because they're going to get incorporated in with the meat. And that'll help, the salt will help to draw the moisture out of the vegetables even more and get that cooked out. So I'm going to put 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm not going to measure my pepper because it's in this big grinder. I'm going to end up with a total of about 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. I'll just stir this around. When it starts to brown, and I have this on just under high, and I don't see the little puddles of liquid around the edges and it starts to really brown, then I'll know it's good enough and I can add it to my meatloaf. Okay, so I have 2 pounds of meat. Tonight I'm using 1 pound of ground turkey and 1 pound of ground beef. I didn't get my trash can out. And so let me beat up my egg. So that's broken up nicely. And then I'm going to put my meat in. And most of my seasoning for my meatloaf is going to come from the vegetables. There's a lot of flavor in there with the onion and the mushrooms. And of course the meat, the beef has a nice flavor. The turkey is pretty mild. And then my ketchup, which I don't have this recipe up on the blog yet because I haven't perfected it yet, but it's basically tomato sauce and some coconut aminos, which is this. We talked about that a lot. Sort of a soy sauce flavor, and a few dates. And then seasonings, onion powder, garlic powder, paprika. So I'm going to use that in my meatloaf, and that will give it a lot of flavor. I'm going to go ahead and just break this up a little bit. I always cook with my hands, and I have for a really long time. And I remember one time we were babysitting our niece and nephew when they were really little, and we didn't have kids yet. And I thought, oh, it'll be really fun to cook with my niece. She would probably really enjoy that. And so, you know, I told my sister-in-law that's what we were planning to do, and she didn't say anything. She's like, oh, it's a great idea. You know, she'll love that. She's really nice about it. And I got there, I think we were making cookies. And my niece, she didn't want to get her hands in anything. She really wanted nothing to do with it, especially touching the food. And it was cookie dough. I think we were shaping it into a ball or something. She wanted nothing to do with touching it. So I just think that's really funny. I touch my food all the time. It doesn't bother me. I'm just constantly washing my hands. I just peeked at my kids outside. They are babysitting a jar with a piece of banana in it because we've been studying insects and they're trying to catch a fly so they can look at its mouth up close. So they're out there watching their jar to see if they can catch a fly. All right, let me stir my veggies. A lot of moisture has cooked out of there, but there's still a lot more. So we'll continue to cook that for a few more minutes. Just while I'm getting everything else ready. There's something brown. I think that might be an onion skin. Yeah, we'll fish that out. Okay, so the other thing that's going to go, typically a meatloaf is meat, and then whatever kind of flavorings, and then something that's called a panade. That's the fancy cooking term. And it's usually breadcrumbs mixed with milk. And my recipe that I have on the blog, it's almond flour, and I don't think I have mixed it with any milk, maybe some coconut milk, I don't remember. But I'm going to actually mix it with my ketchup, and that'll just impart extra flavor into the dish. tablespoons of this homemade ketchup, which I haven't continued to work on this recipe because I've been a little bit afraid to feed it to my kids. I thought they probably won't like it, so I haven't sprung it on anybody yet, but I just tasted it again to make sure it was still good, and it's actually, it's really good. So I'm just going to smush my almond flour with my ketchup to just get the flour moist, and that'll again help mix it in and help impart all this flavor to the whole recipe. And I think I'm going to end up needing about 3 tablespoons in there. Let me write that down so I can make that correction. 3 tablespoons. We'll mix that up. We're excited around here because we're going strawberry picking tomorrow. Last year our strawberry crop got ruined because we had a lot of rain, and that really ruined the crop. And we are out of strawberry jam, and it has been a crisis, let me tell you. So we have our recipe for our Paleo strawberry jam that I'm going to try. It uses an apple, so you get the pectin from the apple instead of using a box of the gelling pectin stuff. So we'll see how that works. I'm excited to try that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pour this in. So I have my egg, and I have my meat, and then I have my panade of almond flour and my homemade ketchup. And I'm going to check on my veggies again. That looks great. It's starting to brown around the edges. As I move it around, I'm not getting puddles of liquid. So that is just about done. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix myself a little ice bath so I can chill it down really quickly and add it to my meat. So I'm going to get a bowl, and let's see, I'll get a glass bowl. So I'm going to put a little water in this, just enough so my ice cubes will float around. And then I'll put my veggies in here. We're going to have green meatloaf. We should have this on St. Patrick's Day. Okay, so that's good. Can you tell how much drier that is than it was when I first put it in there? You could use kale. You could use spinach. I don't think I would put anything like asparagus or Brussels sprouts in there, but you have some flexibility in the types of veggies that you add in. And I'm going to get this right in my ice bath. I need a little bit more water in here, honestly. And just kind of press the vegetables up around the edges of my bowl, and this will chill it down really fast. So I have a 1/2 teaspoon of salt in this vegetable mixture, and about a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and I'm going to taste it, because if it doesn't taste salty to me, then this is going to be bland, because I haven't put any salt and pepper in my meat. It does taste a little bit salty, but it's not super salty, and it is really peppery because that pepper ground really big, is coarse, so I think that makes it taste spicier. Okay, so I added another 1/4 teaspoon to my meat. You can see the steam here. So we'll stir this around a little bit. It'll cool off really fast. And the way I'm going to make this in the Instant Pot so I can actually get it out is to use a piece of foil. So I went ahead, and in my Instant Pot I have put my this rack that comes with it, and I have here some tomato sauce that I made last summer, and I canned it, and I do want to measure. I want to put about 1.5 cups of this tomato sauce in the bottom. This is like a chunky veggie sauce. You can see it's got kale and it has squash, all sorts of things. It smells really good. All my fresh herbs. Because you can't use a pressure cooker without liquid in the bottom. So make sure we have liquid in the bottom, and I want to use liquid that has a good flavor. Okay, so it's 1.5 cups of our tomato sauce. And I'm going to add an extra tablespoon of my coconut aminos because it just adds so much flavor. I just don't want to add these hot vegetables to my meat mixture because it'll start to cook it, start to cook the egg, and I want it to cook all together and for food safety reasons. Okay, so that needs another minute. This needs another minute, so we'll be back in a minute. When I have a part of an onion left over, I always wrap it in foil because otherwise you'll have everything in your fridge smelling like onion. Let me wipe my board off. Just try to keep everything nice and neat. Okay, so I've got my meat. This is my vegetable mixture, my squash, my onion, my mushrooms that I sauteed for probably about 8 minutes, I'm guessing, maybe 10. My panade of the homemade ketchup mixed with almond flour and 1 egg, and then salt and pepper and a little bit of coconut aminos. This one is from Thrive Market, and they sent me a free bottle one time. If you don't know what Thrive is, I have a couple different articles about it on the blog. And it's basically, it's a membership club like Costco. You pay an annual membership, but it's all your healthy ingredients. Think anything you would buy at a health food store or Whole Foods, someplace like that. It's not just food, it's shampoo, toothpaste, and all that kind of stuff, makeup, and it's greatly reduced prices. Even with the membership fee, which is $59 a year, I think, I save a lot of money. Because we don't just eat this way, we totally live without as many chemicals as we possibly can. So that means special shampoo and special toothpaste and special makeup and everything. So anyway, they have come out with their own brands of some items. And so every time I order, I get something for free. And one time I got coconut aminos, and I have been buying the Coconut Secret brand through Thrive Market, but they sell it at Whole Foods. That's the one you can usually find in a local store. And it's really good. It's thicker. It has a very similar flavor to the other brands, but I like that it's a little bit thicker and it's a few cents cheaper. So that wins me over. Okay, so I have just very gently mixed all of this together, and this is my little trick. So you saw me taste the vegetables that went in the meatloaf mix, but I couldn't taste the raw meat. I mean, I guess I could have, but I'm not interested in that. So now that I have it all mixed together, I'm just going to cook a little piece, and this takes a couple extra minutes, but it's the only way you're going to know if it's actually seasoned properly. If I'm just cooking for my family, which I am most of the time, it's not a big deal if we go to the table and like, oh, this is way too salty or has no flavor whatsoever. Everybody puts some ketchup on it or some extra salt and pepper. But if you're having a dinner party, even if it's just, your close friends or family, you don't want to serve something that doesn't taste good, that isn't seasoned well. So this is how we can ensure that it's going to be seasoned well. I'm going to cook a little piece and taste it. And then we can add more salt, pepper, ketchup, whatever to it if we need to. I'm going to top my meatloaf with this ketchup. Now the only thing you're going to not get by using the Instant Pot or pressure cooker, whatever brand you have, instead of cooking your meatloaf in the oven, is you're not going to get that nice crusty crust on top. So you have a couple options. The recipe that I was looking at, they laid some cheese across the top once they released the pressure and took the lid off of their pressure cooker. So they had this melted cheesy top, but I don't want to do that. I would like to keep this paleo. So I think what I'm going to do is take it out and pop it under the broiler for a couple minutes and see if that will crisp up the top for me and still save me time, still save me from having my oven on, 400 for an hour and a half. It won't heat up the house quite as much. So we're going to give that method a try. Of course, you don't have to do that. It's not a big deal to not have a crispy top, but I know that's some people's favorite part, or even just the saving grace of meatloaf for a lot of folks. So we'll try it that way. I have this on really high to cook it fast, so it's smoking a little bit. I'm going to cut it in half and make sure it's cooked on the inside. And it is. Smoked everything up. Okay, let's taste our meatloaf. It's perfect. Maybe my cameraman would like to have a taste. So here's my shaped foil basket. So I'm going to have sort of a round meatloaf, which is fine with me. I don't care what shape it is. We'll pour all that in. And then again, I'm going to use my hands so we don't have a real flat, skinny side and then a fat, thick side. Stick that little piece of zucchini down in there so he's hidden. Round meatloaf. Fabulous. Okay. Alrighty. And just so I have this measured properly, you can write it up for people who like to have measurements. I'm somebody who doesn't like to have measurements, but I know that some people do, and that's okay. And we'll just smooth this over the top. And this will, it would caramelize in the oven, or it will caramelize under the broiler because of the little bit of sugar that's in there, because tomatoes naturally are sweet. And also it has a couple dates in it. So again, we're going to need about 3 tablespoons for our topping. Of course you could put more on, it would be perfectly fine. I'm just trying to cover the whole thing, the sides as well as the top. Okay, so just write that down, 3 tablespoons on top. And down in the pot. Remember, we have our tomato sauce in there. So plug it in. And I want manual, high pressure, and I want 25 minutes. You know, the recipe that I looked at, they used 1.5 pounds of meat, and I used 2 pounds, so I'm going to do 30 minutes. And now we set it, and we get to forget it for 30 minutes. Okay, so my 30 minutes is up. It's actually been 10 minutes. I've been cooking other things. I'm going to finish releasing the steam. Oh, there's not much. How long it takes to come to pressure and then release the pressure is directly related to how much liquid you have in your pot. So like when I make broth and I fill it up to the max, it takes a really long time, like 30 minutes to come to pressure, and it takes a really long time for it to depressurize. So I'd have just that 1.5 cups of tomato sauce in the bottom, so it was really fast for the pressure to come off, which is nice. It's convenient. So open that up. I didn't want all that water to drip on my meatloaf, so I pulled the lid away. And I'm going to take the temperature of my meatloaf to make sure it's done. Oh yeah. It's $168, so for poultry, $170, it's done, so that's good. It'll continue to cook, and I am going to put it under the broiler. Now, do you see the fat that's around the edges? Can you see that oil? That can make a really big mess when I pull this out, and I do not want to have to deal with a really big mess. So, I'm going to do this really carefully. So this is hot. I have the rack in there that came with the Instant Pots. Let me pull that away from the side so I can grip it with my hot pad. Can you get that one? There we go. So I'm going to lift it and tilt it. My meatloaf is cooked, so it's not going to go anywhere, and I'm going to kind of hug it with the handles. There's a lot of steam, so being careful. We'll let all that liquid come off, and then I'll put this on my baking tray. And I don't want to put this under the broiler, so I need my assistant to put the camera down. So I'm going to lift up the foil, and you're just going to take the rack out. Thank you. Here we go. So now I have my foil on my pan, which will keep this pan from getting so dirty. Will make a faster cleanup, and I'm going to pop this whole thing under the broiler. So I'm going to turn my broiler on. So I have my mashed cauliflower in here, and it wasn't quite as done as I wanted it to be, but I'm serving this with my meatloaf, and I'm ready to get my meatloaf under the broiler. So instead of leaving my cauliflower in here for 10 more minutes, I'm going to just pop that under the broiler too. And we'll put the meatloaf in and see if we can crisp up that top. And I'm going to put my vegetables back on the bottom rack to stay warm. I want to keep an eye on this so it doesn't burn, because you know broiling can happen really fast. It's starting to get, so I'm going to close that up. Okay, so what is left in the bottom of my pan from cooking my meatloaf in the Instant Pot is that tomato sauce, which you can see, this was a homemade tomato sauce I made. It has some chunks of squash in it and some greens and some herbs. And then all the liquid that came out of my meatloaf, which I said it was fat, but in fact, I used turkey, which is very lean, and grass-fed beef, which is also very lean. So there really isn't very much fat in that at all. And if I put this through my fat separator, I'm looking at, you can look at the little beads of fat on top. I might get a teaspoon of fat out of that. So if you are somebody who likes to have a gravy with your meatloaf, you could very easily just turn this on saute and boil this and add a little slurry of arrowroot and water. Or if you use, the Trim Healthy Mamas use this stuff called glucomannan, which is just a fiber essentially that will dissolve, and it will thicken that up really fast to a nice gravy consistency. And we're not going to do that because we don't usually eat gravy on our meatloaf. However, I am going to save that because it will make a great soup. I could crumble up a little bit of my leftover meatloaf in it and have some meatloaf soup tomorrow. So that'll be good, and I won't waste it, but we're not going to turn it into gravy. Okay, let me check my broiling meatloaf. You can hear it crackling. And that looks great. Got some veggies in here heating up. Now, if you wanted to, you could serve this with that sauce. You make the gravy out of the sauce. You could serve it with a little ketchup on top, and I will get my ketchup out. But I'm just going to cut into it. You know, the end is usually the best piece. It's nice and crispy. So I'm going to cut this and serve this to my kiddos. And see how that's nice and moist on the inside. We had all those vegetables in there. A little bit of, almond flour mixed with the homemade ketchup. So that goes to the kids. I'm super hungry, so I'm going to give myself a nice big slice and a big scoop of my mashed cauliflower. Should I share? I guess we'll let the husband slash dad eat too. He's been pretty good. We'll give him a nice big slice. This is really cooked through really nicely. I'm very happy with the way that worked in the Instant Pot. And I have some leftover veggies from last night. We had our southern fried okra and then just a bunch of sauteed vegetables, and it wasn't quite enough for all of us, so I gave the kids just some salad greens, which I know they would prefer anyway, and we'll eat the leftover other veggies here. And there's our dinner. Got our mashed cauliflower that actually tastes really good, actually does taste like mashed potatoes, and a really great moist meatloaf that was made in the Instant Pot. And you can find these recipes on my website, ourpaleofamily.com. Actually, the oven fried okra is on there, the mashed cauliflower is on there, and the meatloaf is on there. I'll go back and I'll tweak the meatloaf recipe so it has instructions for the Instant Pot. Thanks, everybody.